what in the world was your biggest obstacle? How did you get through it?
Well, you know, Jody, everybody's life is full of downs and ups and ups and downs. And resilience is really the key to success. And almost 20 years ago now, so I'm quite comfortable talking about this particular setback today. I wasn't at the time. But we lost our largest client. And the company had been really over-dependent on a single client and had just nicely embarked on creating a diversification plan that would, mitigate the risk of the loss of that one client. But I guess you could say we were 5 minutes too late. And so, suddenly I had to think about how we could survive the loss of this client. And, my mind was racing in a million directions of all the things I would need to do. And while at the time I didn't have the model that I use today to help people, figure out how they're going to succeed in spite of everything, I thought afterwards, what process did I follow? So if it's okay with you, I'd like to share my screen and show your viewers the 7 C's that I've now developed.
That would be wonderful. I know we would all welcome that.
All right, so here they are. So the first step in the process is to get all of those ideas, all of those thoughts, all of those anxieties organized. So collect all your thoughts and put them in an organized place. So just on paper. So you could just use a notebook, which is what I did at the time. And then we need to categorize them or prioritize the things that we have thought we will need to do. And in my case, I put my employees as my number one priority. So I needed to figure out, what are we going to do in terms of severance, how much notice, who do I need to keep for how much longer, who can be set free now.
How did you this is something that we could do for our personal lives. I mean, the women I work with, this would be perfect because we're all facing these life challenges. And it's interesting to me how you categorize. How did you categorize?
Well, I had to figure out my priorities. So your priorities are probably going to be driven by your values. So people are my highest value, and that's where I started. And then the next thing was, what am I going to do with all this office space? Because if I don't need the people, I surely don't need the office space. So what can I do to extricate myself from the lease? And then how am I going to work with the remaining clients? And it went on and on like that. But I did separate them into categories of what I need to do right today, right this minute, and what can wait until tomorrow or next week or maybe even next month.
That is a great way. I'm sorry,
yeah.
Please go on.
And I knew that I needed help. So, for example, I didn't know all of the labor standards that would come into play in a situation like this. I didn't have a plan for downsizing my company overnight. And so I got advice from experts who were able to help me sort through how I would gracefully disengage from these employees who had worked hard, who had, been a part of our success and our growth, and do that with grace and leave them with their dignity intact.
So let me ask you a question. This is interesting to me. You are a CEO of a major company. You're in an international group of women that are high-ranking entrepreneurs, and yet you asked for support. That is very telling for me.
Yes, and I would say that is one of those areas that women really need to find a way to accept, ask for help. So often we find ourselves in a place where we think we have to know it all, do it all, be it all, and nobody can live up to that. So know when you need to ask for help, and then take that step. Get the help from experts, because we don't know everything. And once you have done that collaboration, then you need to compose your plan. And that will likely be a step-by-step plan. It will reflect the categories, it'll reflect the advice, it'll reflect your thought process, and now it needs to be committed to paper or electronically, however you work today. At the time, I was working on paper. So I made the plan, and then I needed to communicate that plan. And within it, there would be assignments or areas of responsibility that I would be delegating. So in my plan, there was what needs to be done and who can do it and when does it need to be done by. And then communicate. This is everybody's biggest challenge in life from my point of view. You know, making sure that the message we're sending is the message that is received. And of course, when you call all of your employees together to let them know that this disaster has occurred and what you're going to do about it, they're immediately thinking about how is this going to impact me? So not me, them, you know, my job is, I'm losing my job. When is that going to happen? When am I going to find another job? So try to think in terms of the recipient of the message as you are communicating.
So may I ask you, how did you communicate that clearly so that your employees weren't just flipping out and pulling their hair, wondering if they're going to live under a bridge tomorrow?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things I would have said would never happen in my office, and I did have a list of things that could never happen in my office. Probably at the top of the list was, you'll never see me cry in my office. But I did cry when I had to tell them, you know, what had occurred, and accept responsibility for allowing the company to be at such risk, and that we were 5 minutes too late with our work towards, you know, mitigating this risk. I told them that I would meet with each and every one of them individually, and there were 46 people. So I would meet with each of them, and we would give them a letter which outlined exactly what would happen and when, and that here, you know, and then I put up my list of here's the order. So, you know, come to my office, and I'll talk with each one of you. Now, that might not be possible for somebody with a larger company, but it was definitely possible for me. And it was important for me to speak to each of them individually. And then they left my office with a written document that told them how much they would be paid, you know, when would be their last day, and what would be expected between now and then. And for some of them, like, today is your last day. And I left them all with their dignity. I mean, some of the advice I got on how to handle it, I didn't choose to follow. I didn't choose to lock them all out of the servers. I didn't choose to remove everyone's key to the office. I didn't choose to sleep in the office in case anybody was going to come in and vandalize the place out of anger. I left everybody with their dignity. So they packed up their own desks, and they dropped the key at the front desk when they left. So that is how I did it. And then those that were remaining received a copy of my written plan, so they knew who was doing what and when.
What I'm hearing is that you're willing to really be gut-wrenchingly honest. And that, to me, is such transparency and such honesty and such trust that is so good in any parts of our lives. And you said it's how we are perceived in communication. And that is such a valid point. And I want to be sure that the viewers are really hearing what you're saying.
Well, absolutely. So we continued to communicate throughout the process of, you know, the sixth C, which is conquer. You're going to conquer the challenges as you execute the plan, because no matter how well thought out your plan is, there will be bumps along the way. For example, in terms of our lease, I confess I didn't really read it absolutely word for word when I was signing it, because at that point I was excited that we were getting new space and we were moving in and moving up and growing. Now I had to read it word for word, and so we would have the right to sublet the space with the landlord's permission. The landlord could deny that permission and trigger a 7-day evacuation order. In other words, they could say, no, you may not sublet your space, and we'll give you 7 days to vacate. Fortunately, our landlord was willing to give us a little bit of breathing room, so they gave us 30 days in which to, in the end, we were not able to sell everything and had to call in a liquidator who pays you $1 for all the stuff, and then they take it away. Well, that was heartbreaking.
You accept it and you move on. And I think that's such an important lesson. This is so much, it's not just business, it's life. And that's why I think what these 7 C's are so valuable.
So,
and you are learning, you let it go. I mean, you know, you don't like it, but you accept it and you move on. And I think that's such an important lesson. This is so much, it's not just business, it's life. And that's why I think what these 7 C's are so valuable.
Yes. Well, I agree. Now that I can put it all together in one place, it makes for a pretty good process. And the 7th C is to remember to celebrate. And I don't just mean at the end when you've executed the plan. I mean every day, as there are small successes, to remember to acknowledge and appreciate and validate the people who are achieving each step along the way. Excuse me.
How did you validate yourself? How did you celebrate yourself? Because you have to keep this ball rolling when it's your baby that's going down the tubes.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know that I celebrated myself just in that process. I knew that I needed to be the rainbow, that we could rise like the phoenix from the ashes and carry on. And that's what we did.
Tell us your 3 quotes.
So my favorite quotes, Maya Angelou: do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And certainly looking back when we didn't know, we did the best we could, and we learned through our mistakes. And so that allowed us to do better. And I had to forgive myself for the mistakes I made along the way and to say, well, learning, and it's all material for sharing another day.
What a great attitude.
My second is by Anne Shirley from Anne of Green Gables, written by Lucy Maud Montgomery. And I often introduce myself as Anne with an E, like Anne of Green Gables. Yes. So you know that this was a book that had a really big impact on me. And so Anne Shirley said, tomorrow is another day, all brand new and no mistakes. And of course, yet, it needs to be inserted there at the end. But it's such a reflection of optimism that we will try again tomorrow. And the third is by John Steinbeck, the author of Grapes of Wrath. And it's a little bit more wordy, but to be true to what he actually said, it is a common experience that a problem difficult at night is resolved in the morning after the committee of sleep has worked on it. And I often say to people, it's time to stop. Give this over to the committee of sleep. Tomorrow is another day, all brand new and no mistakes. And when we know better, we can do better. So I use the 3 of them together.
To me, that is resilience, integrity, all rolled up into one. Thank you so very much for sharing your space and your time and your wisdom.